Dr. Marcus Webb pushed through the dense undergrowth of Kepler 442, his environmental suit's air recycler working overtime in the humid alien atmosphere. Behind him, his team of xenoarchaeologists followed single file along the narrow path they had carved through what the locals called the thinking forest. The trees here weren't quite trees. They were something between plant and machine, their crystalline bark pulsing with soft bioluminescent patterns. The native Kethani had warned them about venturing too deep into the forest, speaking in hushed tones about the old builders who still whispered among the roots. "Dr. Webb?" called out his assistant, Dr. Sarah Kim, her voice crackling through the comm system. "The resonance detector is going crazy up here. Whatever's buried under this hill, it's massive." Marcus quickened his pace, pushing aside a curtain of hanging moss that felt disturbingly warm to the touch. The hill Sarah referenced rose nearly 200 meters above the forest floor, covered in the same strange vegetation that seemed to grow in geometric patterns rather than natural chaos. As he crested the rise, Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. The resonance detector wasn't malfunctioning. It was responding to something that defied every law of xenoarchaeology he knew. The structure emerging from the hillside was clearly artificial, but its design was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Where most ancient alien architecture favored either organic curves or rigid geometry, this blended both in ways that hurt to look at directly. Surfaces that should have been solid seemed to shift and flow, while others that appeared liquid remained perfectly stable. "My God," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's xenogeologist. "Marcus, this thing is reading as over 50 years old, but the materials, they're not degrading at all." Marcus activated his portable scanner, sweeping it across the exposed sections of the structure. The readings made no sense. The building, and he was certain now that it was a building, was constructed from materials that registered as both organic and mechanical, both ancient and somehow new. "Dr. Webb," Sarah's voice cut through his concentration. "You need to see this." She was standing near what appeared to be an entrance, a doorway that seemed to exist only when viewed from certain angles. As Marcus approached, symbols began to appear on the surface around the opening, glowing with the same soft light as the forest's bioluminescence. But these weren't just any symbols. Marcus had spent 15 years studying dead languages from across the galaxy, and he recognized the mathematical constants, the geometric relationships, the universal concepts that any intelligent species would eventually discover. "It's a primer," he said, his voice filled with wonder, "like the Voyager plaques from old Earth. They're trying to establish communication." As if responding to his words, the symbols shifted and changed, becoming more complex. Mathematical equations gave way to stellar cartography, which transformed into what could only be described as blueprints, technical diagrams for technologies that shouldn't have been possible 50 years ago. "Sarah, are you recording this?" "Every photon," she replied, her hands flying over her equipment. "But Marcus, some of these designs, they look familiar." Marcus looked closer at the flowing diagrams. Sarah was right. Buried within the alien mathematics were concepts that reminded him of human engineering principles, not copied, but parallel evolution of ideas. A new set of symbols appeared, and this time Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The universal symbol for hydrogen, the mathematical relationship of pi. And then, unmistakably, a double helix, the structure of DNA. "They knew," he whispered. "Somehow, they knew about carbon-based life, about us." The symbols continued to change, showing star maps that included Earth's solar system, marked with the same notation used for inhabited worlds. But according to the date stamps on the diagrams, this map had been created nearly 40 years before humans had even developed agriculture. "Dr. Webb," Elena's voice was tight with excitement and fear. "The structure is responding to our presence. Internal power systems are coming online." Deep within the alien building, lights began to flicker to life. The entrance, no longer shifting and uncertain, stood open like a welcoming doorway. Marcus looked back at his team. 3 of the finest xenoarchaeologists in human space, standing on the threshold of the greatest discovery in galactic history. "Well," he said, adjusting his equipment pack, "I didn't become a xenoarchaeologist to stay safe. Who's with me?" The interior of the structure defied every expectation Marcus had formed during his career. The corridors were neither cramped nor cavernous, but seemed to adjust their dimensions to accommodate the team comfortably. The walls displayed a constant flow of information, star charts, technical diagrams, and symbols that shifted between mathematical concepts and what appeared to be artistic expression. "The air in here is breathable," Elena reported, checking her atmospheric scanner. "Not just safe, it's actually healthier than what we were breathing outside. Perfect oxygen-nitrogen balance, trace minerals that support cellular regeneration." Sarah was documenting everything with her cameras, but the devices were struggling to capture the full scope of what they were seeing. "The walls aren't just displaying information," she said. "They're creating it in real time. This isn't a recording, it's a living database." As they moved deeper into the structure, the displays began to focus on specific themes. One section showed the evolution of stellar engineering, techniques for moving stars, harvesting the energy of entire galaxies, and constructing megastructures that spanned light years. Another revealed biological engineering that made humanity's genetic therapy look like finger painting. But it was the third section that stopped Marcus cold. The walls here showed the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxy, displayed like a vast tapestry of time. Species after species developed, reached for the stars, built great empires, and then vanished. Not destroyed by war or catastrophe, but simply gone, leaving behind only ruins and mysteries. "It's a pattern," Marcus realized. "Look at the timescales. Every 50, 0 to 60, 0 years, the galaxy undergoes a kind of reset. Advanced civilizations disappear, and new ones rise from primitive species." Elena studied the displays more closely. "But not all of them disappear. Look here. There are species that manage to break the cycle. They're marked differently." She was right. Scattered throughout the galactic timeline were civilizations marked with a unique symbol, species that had somehow transcended the cycle of rise and fall. The symbol was complex, incorporating elements that suggested growth, learning, and partnership. "Partnership with whom?" Sarah asked. The answer came as they reached the heart of the structure. The central chamber was vast, its walls covered with the most complex displays they had yet seen. And at the center, floating in a column of soft light, was a figure that took Marcus's breath away. It was humanoid, but clearly not human, tall and graceful, with elongated limbs and features that suggested both great age and timeless vitality. Its skin had a translucent quality that revealed complex patterns of light flowing beneath the surface. But as they approached, the figure changed. Its features shifted, becoming more human-like while retaining their alien beauty. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking directly into their minds in perfect, unaccented English. "Welcome, children of Earth. We have been waiting for you." Marcus found his voice first. "You're one of the builders, the old ones the Kethani spoke of?" The figure smiled, an expression that somehow conveyed both infinite patience and genuine warmth. "We are what your species might call gardeners. We tend the galaxy, helping young civilizations avoid the mistakes that have destroyed so many others." "The cycle," Elena said. "The pattern of civilizations rising and falling. You've been watching it happen for millions of years. Guiding it, when possible, preventing it, when necessary." The figure gestured, and the walls showed new images, civilizations that had been saved from self-destruction, species that had been nudged away from paths that led to extinction. But we cannot save every species. Free will is the most precious gift of intelligent life. We can only offer guidance to those ready to receive it. Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her awe. "But why us? What makes humanity special?" The figure's expression changed, showing something that might have been surprise. "You do not know? You have not realized what makes your species unique among all those we have encountered?" "Our adaptability," Marcus guessed. "Our tendency to cooperate with other species. Those are symptoms, not causes." The figure waved its hand, and the walls showed scenes from human history, the development of agriculture, the Industrial Revolution, the Space Age. First contact with alien civilizations. Watch how your species solves problems. The images focused on specific moments. Human engineers working to repair a damaged alien starship, using principles they had never encountered before. Human doctors developing treatments for diseases that affected species with completely different biologies. Human artists creating works that spoke to the souls of beings who had never seen a sunset or felt rain. Every other species we have encountered thinks in terms of their own experience, the figure explained. They solve problems based on their evolutionary history, their cultural background, their species, specific advantages. But humans think like the universe itself. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? You see patterns where others see chaos. You find connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena. You take principles from one field and apply them to completely different problems. In essence, you think the way the universe builds itself, through constant experimentation, adaptation, and the combination of existing elements in new ways. The walls showed more examples. Human scientists discovering quantum mechanics by thinking about light as both wave and particle. Human engineers developing faster-than-light travel by combining principles from biology and physics. Human diplomats resolving conflicts between species that had been enemies for millennia by finding common ground in art and philosophy. This is why we have waited, the figure continued, why we have guided your development so carefully. Your species has the potential to become what we are, gardeners of the galaxy, helping other civilizations reach their full potential. Eleanor looked around the chamber, taking in the incredible technology that surrounded them. You want us to take your place? Not replace us, join us. The galaxy is vast, and there are more young civilizations than we can guide alone. But more than that. The figure paused, its expression becoming almost vulnerable. We have been alone for so long. We have forgotten what it means to grow, to discover, to be surprised. Your species can teach us to be more than we are. The revelation that humanity was being evaluated for cosmic guardianship should have been overwhelming, but Marcus found himself strangely calm. Perhaps it was the environment. The structure itself seemed designed to promote clear thinking and emotional balance. Or perhaps it was the realization that this explained so many mysteries about human development. The various gifts our species has received over the millennia, he said. Sudden leaps in technology, the appearance of revolutionary ideas in multiple places simultaneously. That was you. The figure nodded. Gentle guidance only. The ideas, the innovations, the breakthroughs, those came from human minds. We simply provided inspiration at crucial moments. Sarah was studying the displays that showed other species' development. But why haven't you offered this partnership to other races? Some of these civilizations seem quite advanced. Advanced in technology, yes, but advancement and wisdom are not the same thing. The walls showed images of various alien civilizations, some of which Marcus recognized from current galactic politics. The hegemony developed incredible genetic manipulation capabilities, but they used them only to enhance their own species' advantages. The Zephyrians created beautiful crystal cities, but they build them only for themselves. The Corvan achieved mastery over space and time, but they use it primarily for conquest. The figure gestured, and new images appeared. Humans working alongside aliens, sharing technology, collaborating on projects that benefited entire star systems rather than single species. Humans instinctively share knowledge. You see a problem, you solve it, and then you teach others how to solve it too. This is extraordinarily rare among intelligent species. Elena frowned. But we're not perfect. Humans have fought wars, enslaved other humans, destroyed environments. We've made terrible mistakes. And learned from them, the figure replied. This is the key difference. Other species make mistakes, and then develop justifications for why those mistakes were necessary or inevitable. Humans make mistakes, feel guilt about them, and then work to ensure they never happen again. The chamber around them shifted, and suddenly they were standing in what appeared to be a vast library. But instead of books, the shelves held crystalline structures that pulsed with stored information. This is the archive of failures, the figure explained. Every mistake made by every civilization we have encountered, catalogued and preserved, so that future species might learn from them. Most species, when shown this archive, focus on the failures of others and feel superior. Humans, we have observed, focus on their own potential failures and seek to prevent them. Marcus walked among the crystal archives, seeing reflected in their depths the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Wars fought over resources that could have been shared. Species that destroyed themselves through environmental degradation. Empires that collapsed because they valued conquest over cooperation. But there's something else, Sarah said, studying the patterns in the crystalline structures. These aren't just records of failure, they're learning tools. Each failure contains the seed of potential success. The figure's expression brightened considerably. Exactly. You see the pattern. This is why your species fascinates us. Where others see endings, you see beginnings. Elena had wandered to another section of the archive, where the crystals showed not failures but successes, civilizations that had transcended their limitations and achieved something approaching perfection. These are the other gardener species? Some of them. Others achieved transcendence through different paths. The figure joined her, touching one of the crystals. The image within showed beings of pure energy, existing as living thought. Another showed creatures who had merged so completely with their technology that the distinction between biological and artificial had become meaningless. But you chose to remain physical, Marcus observed. We chose to remain engaged with the physical universe, yes. Some forms of transcendence lead to withdrawal from reality. We believe that wisdom means taking responsibility for the universe that created you. The archive shifted again, and they found themselves in a vast workshop. Here, the walls showed not images but active projects, stellar engineering efforts, the construction of massive space habitats, the careful nurturing of young civilizations across the galaxy. This is what we offer you, the figure said. Not just knowledge, but purpose. The chance to be part of something larger than any single species or planet. Sarah was studying the stellar engineering displays with the fascination of a scientist seeing new principles of physics. The energy requirements for these projects. You'd need to harness the entire output of multiple stars, which becomes possible when multiple species work together, each contributing their unique strengths. The figure gestured, and the displays showed human engineers working alongside beings Marcus didn't recognize, species that had accepted the gardener role and were now part of the cosmic partnership. But it was Elena who asked the crucial question, what happens if we say no? What if humanity isn't ready for this responsibility? The figure's expression grew sad. Then you continue to develop as you will, and we continue to watch and hope. But Marcus, it looked directly at him. Your species is already approaching the critical threshold. Within the next century, you will develop the power to reshape solar systems. The question is not whether you will have this power, but whether you will use it wisely. The workshop faded, and they were back in the central chamber. But now Marcus could see new details, subtle indicators of vast machinery extending deep into the planet's crust, power systems that tapped into the rotation of the world itself, communication networks that span the galaxy. This facility, he realized, it's not just a meeting place, it's a test. Everything since you entered the forest has been a test, the figure confirmed. How you responded to the unknown, how you worked together as a team, how you processed new information, how you reacted to beings different from yourselves. Marcus looked at his team, Sarah, whose curiosity had overcome her fear, Elena, whose scientific precision had helped them understand what they were seeing, and himself, who had pushed forward despite every instinct telling him to retreat to safety. And how did we do? The figure smiled. You are here, speaking with me as equals rather than supplicants. You have asked the right questions and shown genuine concern for the welfare of others. Most importantly, you have demonstrated that humanity's greatest strength is not any single quality, but your ability to combine different perspectives to find solutions that none of you could have reached alone. So we passed? This was not a test you could fail, Marcus. It was an opportunity to demonstrate what we already knew, that your species is ready to take the next step in its development. The chamber began to change around them, walls becoming transparent to reveal the vast scope of the facility. It extended for kilometers in every direction, much of it clearly built by other species, gardener races that had once stood where humanity now stood. The choice is not whether you are ready, the figure continued. The choice is whether you are willing. The return journey to their base camp passed in contemplative silence. Each member of the team was lost in thought, processing what they had experienced and the magnitude of the choice that lay before humanity. Dr. Marcus Webb sat in his tent that evening, staring at the recordings Sarah had made inside the builder facility. The images were clear, the audio perfect, but somehow the recordings failed to capture the sense of vast purpose that had filled the chamber. It was like trying to photograph the concept of hope. "Can't sleep either." Elena's voice came from outside his tent. "Come in," Marcus called, and soon all 3 team members were crowded into the small space, sharing coffee heated over a portable fusion cell. "I keep thinking about what they said," Sarah said, cradling her cup, "about humans thinking like the universe itself. What if they're wrong? What if we're not as special as they believe?" Elena shook her head. "I've been going over the recordings, analyzing the patterns they showed us. Their assessment is based on thousands of years of observation, not wishful thinking. The mathematical models alone." "But models aren't reality," Marcus interrupted gently. "The question isn't whether their analysis is correct. The question is whether we're willing to accept the responsibility they're offering." He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth as seen from orbit, a blue marble suspended in the cosmic dark. "Think about what this means. If we accept their offer, humanity becomes responsible not just for our own survival, but for the guidance and protection of countless other species." "We're already doing that in a way," Sarah pointed out. "The Alliance, the various cooperative treaties, the joint research projects. We've been moving in this direction for decades." "On a local scale," Elena agreed. "But this is the entire galaxy. Millions of worlds, billions of species we've never even encountered." Marcus set down his coffee and activated his personal communicator. "I think it's time we brought this to people who can make the real decisions." The emergency session of the United Earth Council was convened within 48 hours of Marcus's initial report. Representatives from every major nation and colony world gathered in the orbital facility that served as humanity's de facto capital, their faces reflecting a mixture of excitement, skepticism, and barely contained panic. President Chen, the same woman who had led humanity through the Devourer crisis years earlier, now showed the silver hair and lined face of someone who had carried the weight of species-level decisions. She studied the preliminary report with the careful attention of someone who understood that words on a page could reshape the future of human civilization. "Dr. Webb," she said finally, "I want to make sure I understand this correctly. An ancient alien species, one that has been secretly guiding human development for millennia, has offered to make us cosmic gardeners responsible for nurturing other civilizations across the galaxy." "That's a simplified version, but essentially accurate," Marcus replied. Admiral Morrison, now in his 70s but still sharp as a plasma cutter, leaned forward in his chair. "What's the catch? In my experience, offers that sound too good to be true usually are." "The catch is the responsibility itself," Elena answered. "If we accept, we become accountable for the welfare of every developing civilization in our sector of the galaxy. Billions of beings we've never met, whose needs and cultures we don't understand." Dr. Kim, the Council's chief science advisor, had been silent through most of the presentation. Now she spoke up. "Dr. Webb, in your assessment, what happens if we refuse? Do the builders continue their current role, or do they withdraw entirely?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Based on our conversation, I believe they would continue their current activities, but they're clearly reaching the limits of what they can accomplish alone. The galaxy is expanding. New civilizations are emerging faster than they can guide them effectively." "So we're not just being offered a role," President Chen said slowly. "We're being recruited to help with a job that's becoming too large for the current workforce." "In a sense, yes." The debate that followed lasted 3 days. Military leaders worried about humanity's ability to defend other species when they were still rebuilding from their own recent conflicts. Scientists were excited by the prospects of accessing builder technology and knowledge. Philosophers and ethicists questioned whether any species had the right to guide the development of others. But it was Dr. Sarah Kim, Marcus's former assistant, who provided the perspective that ultimately swayed the vote. "I've been thinking about the alternative," she said, addressing the full council on the final day of debate. "What if we say no? What if we decide this responsibility is too great, too dangerous, too presumptuous?" She activated a holographic display showing the current state of galactic civilization, dozens of species at various stages of development, some cooperating, others in conflict, many isolated and struggling with problems they couldn't solve alone. The builders have been doing this work for millions of years, and they're asking for our help because they can't do it alone anymore. If we refuse, what happens to all those young civilizations that need guidance? What happens to species facing extinction because they can't overcome challenges we've already solved? She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of human civilization. We didn't ask to be in this position. We didn't seek out cosmic responsibility. But we're here. We have capabilities that others need, and we have the opportunity to make a real difference. How can we justify saying no? The vote, when it came, was closer than Marcus had expected. 847 in favor, 623 opposed, with 91 abstentions. But it was enough. Humanity would accept the role of cosmic gardeners. 6 months after the council vote, Marcus found himself standing in the observation deck of humanity's first gardener facility, a massive space station constructed in orbit around Jupiter using a combination of human engineering and builder technology. The station was a marvel of cooperative design. Human architects had provided the basic structure, focusing on modularity and adaptability. Builder engineers had contributed technologies that seemed to bend the laws of physics, creating spaces that were larger inside than outside, and power systems that drew energy from quantum fluctuations. But it was the collaborative spaces that truly impressed Marcus. Gardens where plants from a dozen different worlds grew together in impossible harmony. Workshops where human engineers worked alongside builder craftsmen to develop tools for species they had never met. Libraries where human philosophers debated ethics with beings whose thought processes operated on completely different principles. "It's magnificent," said Dr. Vasquez, joining him at the observation window. She had been appointed as the station's chief science officer, responsible for adapting builder technologies for human use. "But I have to admit, sometimes I feel completely out of my depth." Marcus nodded. "I think that's the point. The moment we start feeling like we understand everything is the moment we stop growing." Through the transparent aluminum of the observation deck, they could see human and builder ships working together to construct additional facilities. The builders had been true to their word. They were partners, not overlords. Human ideas and innovations were given equal weight, with builder experience and wisdom. "Dr. Webb," a voice called from behind them. Marcus turned to see Commander Lisa Santos approaching. She had been appointed as the station's military liaison, responsible for the defense systems that protected not just the facility, but the young civilizations it served. "Commander, what's the status of the Kepler 438 situation?" Santos's expression was grim. "The civil war is escalating. The Drell are using biological weapons now, and the Keth are threatening to deploy planet crackers in response. If we don't intervene soon, we're looking at complete extinction for at least one species, possibly both." This was the reality of gardener work, not the gentle guidance of species ready to receive help, but crisis intervention for civilizations tearing themselves apart. In the past 6 months, humanity had been called upon to mediate territorial disputes, provide disaster relief for worlds facing environmental collapse, and develop diplomatic solutions to conflicts that had raged for centuries. "What are our options?" Marcus asked. The traditional builder approach would be subtle manipulation, economic pressure, technological incentives, gradual cultural influence. But that takes decades, and these species don't have decades. Marcus considered the alternatives. The human approach to problem solving was more direct, more immediate, but also more risky. Where builders planned in centuries, humans thought in years, or even months. "Commander, what do you think would happen if we offered both species immediate access to post-scarcity technology? Food synthesizers, unlimited clean energy, terraforming equipment, everything they need to make their resource conflicts irrelevant." Santos raised an eyebrow. "That's not how the builders usually operate. They believe species need to earn their technological advancement through cultural development. But these species are about to exterminate each other. Cultural development is a luxury they can't afford." Elena, who had been listening to the conversation, pulled up a holographic display showing the Kepler 438 system. "It's risky, Marcus. Giving advanced technology to a species in the middle of a war, they could just find new ways to kill each other. Or they could realize that war has become pointless, Marcus countered. When scarcity is eliminated, most conflicts become obsolete. It was Dr. Sarah Kim who provided the crucial insight. She had been working with builder psychologists to understand the mental patterns that led species toward or away from self-destruction. What if we don't just give them technology? She suggested. What if we give them a project? Something that requires both species to work together, something so compelling that it overrides their desire to fight. Marcus smiled. What did you have in mind? Their sun is going to go nova in about 50 years. Both species know this, but they've always assumed it's a problem for distant descendants. What if we show them how to move their entire solar system to a safer location? Make it a joint project that will take several centuries to complete. It was audacious, even by human standards. Moving a solar system was the kind of megaproject that required the resources and cooperation of multiple species working in perfect harmony for generations. But it was also exactly the kind of impossible challenge that humans specialized in solving. The builders will think we're insane, Elena warned. Probably, Marcus agreed. But they asked us to be partners, not to copy their methods. Sometimes the human approach is exactly what's needed. The Kepler 438 intervention became humanity's first major success as cosmic gardeners. The offer to help move their solar system didn't just end the war, it transformed both species' entire understanding of what was possible. Within a decade, the Drell and Keth had not only achieved peace, but had become one of the most effective cooperative partnerships in the galaxy. More importantly, it established humanity's reputation as gardeners who thought differently. Where builders offered wisdom and patience, humans offered audacity and impossible solutions. 5 years after humanity's acceptance of the gardener role, Marcus stood once again in the builder facility on Kepler 442. But now he was not a visitor. He was a colleague, meeting with his builder counterpart to review the progress of their shared responsibilities. The figure that had first welcomed him to the facility now had a name, Keeper Althea, and had become something like a friend. The formal distance of their first meeting had given way to the comfortable collaboration of partners who had learned to trust each other's judgment. The quarterly reports are quite remarkable, Althea said, reviewing holographic displays that showed the status of dozens of developing civilizations. Human intervention methods continue to achieve results that our models suggest should be impossible. Marcus smiled. We've learned that sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem is to ignore the fact that it's impossible. The displays showed success after success. The Rigel system, where humans had ended a 1,000-year plague by teaching the inhabitants to think of disease as an engineering problem rather than a biological one. The Vega colonies, where human artists had resolved cultural conflicts by creating art forms that could only be appreciated through cooperation between warring factions. The Centauri Republic, where human economists had eliminated poverty by designing economic systems based on collaboration rather than competition. But it was the failures that Marcus found most instructive. The Arcturus Collective had rejected all offers of help, choosing isolation over cooperation. The Tau Ceti Empire had used human-provided technology to enhance their existing oppressive systems rather than reform them. The Procyon Alliance had accepted human guidance, but then demanded to become gardeners themselves before they had developed the wisdom necessary for the role. We're learning, Marcus said, studying the failure reports. Each mistake teaches us something new about when to intervene and when to step back. Althea gestured, and the displays changed to show long-term projections. The statistical models are quite encouraging. The rate of civilizational collapse has decreased by 23%. Since human gardeners began active interventions. The rate of successful transcendence to post-scarcity societies has increased by 31%. And the rate of new gardener recruitment? 40% above historical averages. It seems that species guided by human methods are more likely to eventually accept gardener responsibilities themselves. This was perhaps humanity's greatest contribution to the gardener project. Where builder-guided species tended to become stable but insular, human-guided species often developed the same outward-looking, problem-solving mentality that had made humans effective gardeners in the first place. There is something else, Althea continued, and her tone became more serious. The deep survey teams have detected something unusual in the galactic core region. The displays shifted to show long-range sensor data from the galaxy's center. Marcus frowned as he studied the readings. Massive energy signatures that didn't match any known phenomena. What are we looking at? We're not certain. The energy patterns are consistent with large-scale engineering projects, but the scale is unprecedented. Someone or something is reshaping the fundamental structure of the galactic core. Marcus felt a chill. Another gardener species? Possibly. Or something else entirely. The concerning factor is that the project began approximately 50 years ago, shortly after your species achieved faster than light travel. The implication was clear. Humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage had triggered something, attracted the attention of beings or forces that had previously remained hidden. Recommendations? Althea's expression was troubled. We need more information. But Marcus, if these are builders working on the same scale we observe, their capabilities far exceed anything in our experience. We may be looking at entities that are to us what we are to developing civilizations. The possibility of cosmic entities operating on scales beyond current understanding was both thrilling and terrifying. It suggested that the Gardner Project was itself just one layer in a hierarchy of intelligence and responsibility that stretched far beyond anything they had imagined. Well, Marcus said finally, I suppose every gardener eventually has to meet their own gardeners. The investigation of the galactic core phenomena would take months, possibly years. But as Marcus prepared to return to human space, he felt a sense of satisfaction that would have surprised his younger self. Humanity had accepted the role of cosmic gardeners not because they were perfect, but because they were willing to try. They had brought their own perspective to the ancient work of nurturing developing civilizations, and in doing so had proven that wisdom was not a finite resource to be hoarded, but an infinite one that grew through sharing. The galaxy was a safer, more hopeful place because humans had chosen to accept responsibility for something larger than themselves. And as they prepared to face whatever new challenges the universe might present, they did so with the confidence that came from knowing they were not alone. In the depths of space, automated beacons continued to broadcast messages in thousands of languages. This is the Gardner Network. We are here to help. No species faces the challenges of development alone. Together, we build tomorrow. The message echoed through the void, a promise and an invitation to any who might listen. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson, that the future belonged not to the strongest or the most advanced, but to those willing to work together towards something greater than themselves. And in that cooperation, among the stars, infinite possibilities awaited. 10 years had passed since Marcus Webb first entered the builder facility, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. What had begun as humanity's apprenticeship in cosmic gardening had evolved into something unprecedented, a true merger of perspectives that was reshaping not just how civilizations developed, but how they understood their place in the universe. Marcus, now bearing the title of Senior Gardener, stood in the observation deck of the newest facility, a vast structure built in the space between galaxies, designed to serve as a meeting place for gardener species from multiple galactic communities. Through the transparent walls, he could see the construction of humanity's most ambitious project yet, a network of quantum communication relays that would connect every inhabited system in the local galactic group. Not for control or surveillance, but for the simple purpose of ensuring that no developing civilization would ever again face its challenges alone. The Andromeda teams report successful contact with 3 new gardener species, reported Dr. Sarah Kim, now the Director of Intergalactic Relations. They're interested in joining the network, but they want assurances that human methods won't disrupt their traditional approaches. Marcus smiled. That was always the challenge, balancing humanity's instinct for rapid, direct action with the patience and subtlety that had served the builders for millions of years. Tell them we're not interested in replacing their methods, he said. We want to learn from them. Every species that joins the network makes us all more effective. And it was true. The 10 years since humanity had joined the Gardner Project had been a period of unprecedented learning and growth. Human engineers had developed new technologies by combining builder principles with insights from a dozen other species. Human diplomats had resolved conflicts by applying psychological techniques learned from alien cultures. Human scientists had made breakthrough discoveries by thinking about familiar problems from completely alien perspectives. But perhaps most importantly, humanity had learned that their greatest strength as gardeners was not any particular skill or technology,